The entire foundation of the UFC just cracked. A shockwave just tore through the heavyweight division, and I promise you nothing will be the same. The man that so many of us consider the greatest fighter to ever do it is gone. In a bombshell announcement that had no warning, no tribute, and no farewell fight, Jon Jones has walked away. At the UFC Baku post-fight press conference of all places, Dana White dropped the news that put the entire MMA world on ice. He just said it cold and simple. Jon Jones called us last night and retired. Jon Jones is officially retired. Tom Aspinall is the heavyweight champion of the UFC. And just like that, it's over. The controversial, the complicated, and the completely dominant reign of Jon Jones is done. And in its place, a new era has been shoved into the spotlight. The logjam at the top is finally broken, the questions have been answered, and a new undisputed king is on the throne. The whole thing was as sudden as a flash knockout. There was no big ceremony, no emotional video package, not one last walk to the cage. It was just Dana White at a press conference in Azerbaijan, a world away from the Las Vegas lights where Jones built his legend. This didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like slamming the door on a frustrating chapter that had dragged on for way too long. For months, the heavyweight division has been held completely hostage. Jones came back after a 3-year layoff, took the vacant belt from Cyril Gane in March 2023, and then defended it once against a 42-year-old Stipe Miocic in November 2024. Since then, nothing. The division was stuck in paralysis. The biggest threat, the clear and obvious next guy, interim champion Tom Aspinall, was just waiting. Aspinall, who'd won the interim belt by knocking out Sergey Pavlovich, even did the unthinkable and defended his interim title, getting his revenge by starching Curtis Blades. He was the logical next fight, the fight every single fan wanted to see, the true test for Jones at heavyweight. But the fight never happened. Jones just didn't seem interested, blowing off the matchup in public and talking about legacy fights. The noise from fans, from the media, from other fighters, it grew into a deafening roar. Dana White himself had reportedly given Jones a 2-week deadline to make a decision. The standoff had hit a wall. And then, with a phone call on a Friday night, Jones made his choice. He walked, leaving the belt, the what-ifs, and the entire division's future behind him. The way the news was delivered felt cold and clinical, almost a perfect reflection of the tension that had defined the end of his career. Jon Jones's career is one of the most brilliant, chaotic, and just plain confusing stories in all of sports. He hangs it up at 37 years old with a near-perfect record of 28-1. And that one loss was a DQ that everyone knows he didn't really lose. He was the youngest champion in UFC history, a 2-division king, and the owner of a ridiculous 11 light heavyweight title defenses. Inside that cage, he was a master, a violent artist with a fight IQ that felt like something out of a video game. Even his greatest rival, Daniel Cormier, a man he beat twice, has to give him his respect. In his immediate reaction, Cormier admitted, "Inside that 8-sided fence, Jon Jones is a mother. He is something else inside the 8 sides of that octagon." After Dana's announcement, Jones put out his own statement. "Today, I'm officially announcing my retirement from the UFC," he wrote. "This decision comes after a lot of reflection. From the first time I stepped into the octagon, my goal was to push the boundaries of what was possible in this sport." He thanked the UFC, his family, and the fans for their support through incredible highs and some tough lows. He ended it by saying he's looking forward to new challenges and that the best is yet to come. But you can't let the polite statement hide what's really going on here. For a lot of people, this isn't a graceful ride into the sunset. It's an abdication, it's quitting. Daniel Cormier didn't pull any punches, saying it as bluntly as possible. "If Jon Jones doesn't fight this guy, he quit. I will go to my grave believing he quit instead of fighting that guy." The feeling is that Jones, for the first time in his career, saw a monster he wasn't willing to face. Cormier believes that at 38, Jones knew Aspinall was a different kind of threat. Maybe he saw those clips of an older Stipe Miocic actually landing punches on him, and then imagined what a younger, faster, and bigger Aspinall could do. By walking away now, Jones avoids the one question that will haunt his heavyweight legacy forever. Could he have beaten Tom Aspinall? Out of the chaos of the Jones retirement, a new king emerges, and his name is Tom Aspinall. The 32-year-old from Manchester, England, is not the interim champ anymore. He is the undisputed UFC heavyweight champion of the world. The coronation might have happened in a press conference room, but he earned his crown in the octagon with brutal, frightening efficiency. This is the guy who holds the record for the shortest average fight time in UFC heavyweight history. He does not get paid by the hour. His rise has been a blur of nasty knockouts and slick submissions, with wins over guys like Marcin Tybura, Alexander Volkov, Sergey Pavlovich, and that revenge KO over Curtis Blades. He's got that rare mix of speed, power, and technique that makes him an absolute nightmare for anyone in the division. For months, Aspinall has handled this whole mess with a mix of frustration and class. He begged for the Jones fight not because he was being disrespectful, but because that's what a true champion does. He wants to test himself against the best. He even called his shot, famously saying, "I will retire Jon Jones without even fighting him." And you know what? He was right. His reaction to the news, simple, direct, to the point. He posted on social media, "For you fans, it's time to get this heavyweight division going, an active, undisputed champion." That message gets right to the heart of it. Aspinall means a new chapter, an active champ who's ready and willing to fight all comers. The division, stalled out for what felt like an eternity, can finally move. The era of uncertainty is over. The Tom Aspinall era has officially begun. With Jon Jones gone, the UFC's glamour division is suddenly wide open and electric with new possibilities. Tom Aspinall needs his first defense as the undisputed king, and you can bet the UFC is scrambling to figure out what's next. There's no shortage of killers licking their chops for a shot at the belt. The most likely guy seems to be Cyril Gane. The French phenom, whose only losses are in title fights to Francis Ngannou and Jon Jones, would be a fascinating striking puzzle for Aspinall. A fight between two of the most athletic and technical big men on the planet would be a massive way to kick off this new era. But other names are in the mix. Jailton Almeida is already screaming for the fight, saying it's the only one that makes sense. A rematch with Curtis Blades, even with the knockout, is always possible because of his wrestling. And you can't forget Alexander Volkov, another guy Aspinall has beaten who's been on a tear lately. But there's one wildcard name being whispered, a name that could create a legitimate superfight: Alex Pereira. Yeah, Poten, the current light heavyweight champ moving up, is an idea gaining serious steam. People are saying it might be the biggest fight the UFC could make. And Daniel Cormier thinks that if Pereira moved up and beat Aspinall, it might be the only thing that could actually bait Jon Jones out of retirement. The reactions are pouring in. Fellow fighters are celebrating that the division is finally free. The heavyweight division is alive again, buzzing with new blood and fresh fights. For the first time in what feels like forever, the path to the heavyweight title is crystal clear. The Jon Jones chapter is closed. It was a story filled with absolute genius inside the cage and non-stop controversy outside of it. We'll be debating his legacy for the rest of time, but his time as a fighter is done. He leaves a trail of beaten legends and a mountain of what-ifs. But the sport, like it always does, moves on. The heavyweight division is no longer haunted by the ghost of Jon Jones. It's now the kingdom of Tom Aspinall, an active, hungry, and deserving champion. The future isn't about waiting around anymore, it's about fighting. A new generation is ready to make its mark, and the most exciting division in combat sports is finally back in business. The king is gone, long live the king. So what do you think about this? Did Jones walk away to protect his GOAT status, or did he quit because he saw Tom Aspinall coming? And more importantly, who should be the first man to challenge the new undisputed heavyweight champ? Let me know what you think down in the comments.